This is Pandora, my 1,000-gallon cloud rainforest vivarium, an established ecosystem of creatures, plants, and fungi, which I just recently connected to a brand new tree canopy vivarium I call Orchadia, up on the floor above. Many creatures had already migrated up the glass bridge that joins the two tanks, but still, the canopy needed more life. Behold, the team of selected creatures just waiting to be added into their new home. It was time for GAIA II, the second great animal integration advent, where Orchadia, my grand canopy vivarium, would be seeded with life. But little did I know, after adding these new creatures into our new rainforest, the chain of events that occurred would result in the greatest heartbreak I've ever experienced in the history of caring for this rainforest world. This is the Season 2 finale of my Ecosystem Vivarium Series, and sadly, the end of an era, here on the AntsCanada Ant Channel. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. Welcome to the AC family. Enjoy. As I stood before our grand vivarium, it was just so hard for me to look inside. I never imagined this moment would come so soon. I was devastated by a very great loss in our rainforest, and things would never be the same again. I have some very sad news to share. Here's what happened. Ah! I shouted loudly when I came downstairs to a massive swarm of queen and king termites buzzing around the lights inside my home. It was a huge termite nuptial flight, a yearly event that every termite species launches, where new virgin kings and queens fly into the air to pair up and seek new places for them to start their own colonies and nests. And this termite species was huge. How they got inside, I have no idea. This is awesome. While most sane people would be horrified at this sight, I, an entomo-insane person, quickly grabbed a container to begin collecting as many king and queen elates as I could. This termite species was special, and if you've been following the channel for a while, you already know why. These are Macrotermes gilvus, a fungus-growing termite species that create amazing fungus comb gardens deep within their nests, fertilized by their poop, which eventually sprout massive mushrooms that are so delicious to eat. And year after year, I've taken a stab at getting one of these termite colonies going, so I could try to be the first in the world to grow their highly sought-after Termitomyces mushrooms in an indoor setting, something scientists still haven't been able to do, despite humans eating these tasty Termitomyces mushrooms for thousands of years. Rearing the termite colonies in indoor setups, I came close to getting the termites to start creating their fungus gardens, but failed last year, as well as the year before, and the year before that. But this year was different. This time, I had the best simulation of nature to better my odds. Godzilla, our resident baby croc, stared at me as I approached the vivarium. What on earth is he holding? Is it food? He inquired. I opened the tank and with a swift flick of the wrist, threw all the termite elates into the rainforest. What the? All the kings and queens were a bit disoriented by the sudden transport into a strange environment as they flew around in a flurry of wings and legs. But despite the jarring relocation, they each knew they had an important job to do tonight. They'd waited their entire lives for this moment. They had this one shot at finding their single life partner to marry, then burrow underground to form their official love chamber, where they would get started on founding their termite colony and fungus comb. But there was just one problem. Actually, 4 of them. Termite nuptial flights are buffets for frogs. And every year, at this great culling ritual, termites that fail to pass this important test of survival do not get to pass their genes onto the next generation. They get eaten. The termites at this point had no idea they were being hunted and were fully consumed by the drive to find a mate as the frogs leaped to grab mouthfuls of nutritious termite royals. Could you imagine the pressure? You have minutes to sort through the chaos, to speed date and select the love of your life, all while dodging being eaten. The tree frogs were loving this buffet. My heart beat loudly in my chest as I watched the action unfold. Termite spotted and missed. Kermit, you gotta be faster than that. The frogs were starting to get full and were losing their coordination. But one thing was for sure, I would hate to be a termite on this night. As sad as this was, it's a reality in termite life. Not all elates make it to found a colony, and in fact most fail. But I did see some who had proceeded to the next stage, breaking off their wings. And some had even proceeded to the last stage, digging out the royal chamber. Among the crazy commotion all around, I spotted a king and queen royal that had paired up and were now digging with all their might to get underground as quickly as possible. This was the final test. Yay! Go termites, go! The king and queen were both hyper-focused on this burrow. Not all termite royals get to this stage, and they were just a few minutes away now from safety. I watched them dig. Man, Kermit was savage, with a termite in his mouth while holding another to eat next. Soon, looking back at the termites, I was shocked. 3 royals now. Okay, guess this couple was okay with becoming a throuple. How modern. I watched the 3 royals dig deeper. They were almost there. They ignored the chaos that was stirring all around them. Keep on digging, guys! An isopod came out of hiding, and as soon as it realized it was in the middle of a termite bloodbath, oh heck no! And it retreated. The next day, the termite throuple had completely concealed themselves underground, having successfully passed the survival test. Wings were everywhere on the forest floor, and I don't know how many termite royals managed to survive the bloody night and create their founding burrows, but I hoped that this would be the year we successfully rear a fungus-growing macrotermes termite colony and grow some mushrooms. But these termites were the first new creatures to be added to our rainforest, and it was officially the start of GAIA II. My new team of initial creatures were ready to be added into Orchadia. These were simply going to be a first round of creatures, and I'd be adding more over time. First was the stick carrying the mantis egg sacs. And in the stick went. I fixated it here, on the eastern end of Orchadia, close to the glass, so we could clearly see them if we're lucky enough to catch the baby mantises emerging. Next were our detritivores. These creatures would be essential at breaking down organic matter in our rainforest canopy. First up, everyone's favorite, roaches. In these bottles, we had the usual lats and dubia roaches. In you go, my roach children. Shake it like a salt shaker. Now, I also had an interesting addition to the roach community. These are domino roaches, and sadly my last adult died a couple days ago. But as you can see by the remains, They're called domino roaches due to the fact that the adults look like dominoes. I dumped the babies inside Orchadia. Next up, you guys will love these. You all actually helped me decide to get these through votes on my community tab. Within these 2 containers reside a community of crabs. But not just any crabs. These crabs live both semi-aquatically, but also are completely equipped to thrive up in the canopy layer. Did you know that canopy crabs exist? I've spotted them in the wild during past excursions to Borneo and was surprised to see these crabs climbing so high up in the trees. So our crabs were here in 2 groups, and 1 container was for Orchadia. I placed the crabs into Orchadia. These crabs might actually choose to make their way down to Pandora, or decide to completely remain up here, as there were many pools of water around, collecting every time it rained, as well as in the bromeliads in which they could soak. In nature, these crabs would seek out such trapped pools of water in tree hollows, natural pits and branches, and leaves. As for the other groups of crabs, they would be placed into Aqua Noctis, our blackwater pond in Pandora. I situated them on the bank of the pond. Good luck surviving Godzilla. These crabs were so on his menu, but I trusted they had what it took to survive. They also had fish in the waters to catch here, and a fully aquatic crab species to compete with. As I watched the crabs settling into their new home, I wondered where Godzilla was. Yesterday, I saw him basking here on the rock bank for the first time. He was currently missing out on a crab leg buffet. Now, I figured he was somewhere underwater in his bedroom, within the rocks. But turns out, I was wrong. You won't believe where I spotted him. It was in a place I completely didn't expect. On the other side of the tank, deep in the shadows of the vegetation and tree trunk, was a cave, and inside I spotted the eyes. It was Godzilla. Hey, what are you doing all the way here? It looked like he was waiting in ambush to pounce on anything that might wander into this cave. It seemed our baby croc had become more and more comfortable with emerging in the daytime. Before this, he only ventured this far out onto land, in the night, to hunt. But now, it seemed he was super comfortable romping around and hunting during the day. I spotted Drake, our sun skink, with a concerned look, stationed on the driftwood nearby, and Smaug, basking high up on the rock wall. Daenerys was hiding in the moss. It was then that a worrying thought entered my mind, and an unshakable feeling of concern came over me. These 2 species used to operate on opposite schedules, with the croc hunting by night while the sunskinks were asleep underground, and then switching shifts come daytime, so they would never meet. But now I realized that for the first time ever, the 2 predators were suddenly in direct competition. I had to come up with a solution for how to deal with this. There was one idea that came to mind, but I decided to wait and consider more options. But little did I know, I was not ready for what was to come. Next up were our herbivores, important for keeping plant growth under control and also being key prey creatures for predators. For sure, a new population of black forest crickets to replenish the gene pool was on the list. I placed them in with care. I spotted a cricket immediately munching on a decaying fern leaf. Next, a series of grasshoppers. I had a green grasshopper, a couple gray grasshoppers, and this interesting looking grasshopper, which kinda looks like a slant-faced grasshopper, but different. Any experts out there care to ID? I placed it into Orchadia, and it hopped off. I would add more grasshoppers over time. Next up, lower tier predators. In this jar was a beautiful gecko with the most beautiful pattern, distinct from our other geckos already living in the forest. In you go, my friend. Have a look at its coloration. It's such a stunning gecko, and definitely different from any of the ones living inside. It stood still for a while, mesmerized by the splendor of its new home, before beginning to crawl away. And as it did, I was shocked to see its tail. Wow! It had a pinkish red tail. Any gecko experts care to take a stab at its species? I've never seen anything like it. Gorgeous. Enjoy Orchadia, little one. And finally, my favorite additions, which are a category of their own, ants. First, let's look into this test tube. So sadly, I noticed that I no longer see acrobat ants in Pandora. I assume they were either outcompeted by invasive ghost ants, or their queen died for reasons unknown. But no worries, as I had an acrobat queen ant caught from nuptial flight this year. And what's special is she decided to keep her wings. Usually queens break them off after mating. She was currently caring for a pile of brood and had some nanitids, her first set of workers, to help her get the colony started. I placed the test tube into Orchadia behind one of the orchids and placed a smaller cotton piece at the opening of the test tube to form a large double door. The ants will hopefully find a more suitable place to nest somewhere in the canopy and will move out of this test tube. And finally, this here is an AC Hybrid Nest Mini plus Outworld setup, one of our several great ant farm starter kits available on my site, AntsCanada.com. And as some of you may know, when we hit 5 million subs, I moved a young black carpenter ant colony in here. Check them out now. They've since tripled in size, with an active and healthy queen, and lots of majors, brood, and busy workers. The hybrid nest is attached by way of tubes to their outworld, where they eat and dump all their garbage. As you can see, now because the golden carpenter ants have been doing so well in Pandora, and we're approaching 6 million subs soon, I wanted to give these black carpenters a shot at life in our rainforest and bring the golden carpenters a little competition. I disconnected all tubes and placed both the nest and outworld into Orchadia, removing the cover to encourage the colony to move out when ready. Now I do have a starting multi-queen weaver ant colony that will be placed into Orchadia as well, but they're not ready yet to move in. I wanted to give them the best chance by ensuring the colony has plenty of workers first, as this species is extremely hard to get started from just queens. They will be ready in a few more weeks. And just like that, GAIA II was complete. All the animals had been added into our canopy, and I couldn't wait to see how our rainforest had been transformed with all of this new life. I wanted to allow this team of creatures to establish for the time being, before adding in any larger animals I had in mind. But while our new animals were starting their journey with us in our rainforest, others in the rainforest were about to be ending theirs. The next day, I looked into Orchadia and marveled at all the new creatures we put in, already enjoying their new life in their grand canopy. The crickets were all around, favoring the banyan leaves. Males had begun their courting rituals, singing to potential females. The grasshoppers were seen all around, just hanging out in the foliage. Up there was a gray grasshopper, up close to the lights. I spotted a roach tucking into a moss cavern to sleep. The acrobat ants had moved out of their test tube overnight, so I removed the test tube. I hope to see acrobat ants in our rainforest in the weeks to come. The carpenters were still inside their hybrid nest, but I didn't want to rush them out. They'd be moving when they were ready. The crabs in the canopy were hiding in the shadows, waiting to emerge at night. But when I headed down to ground level to check out how the crabs were doing in the pond, I was shocked to see this. It was Godzilla, deep in the driftwood cavern, And from what I could see, he was swallowing something. He had crawled into here to feed, again in broad daylight. This scared me greatly. This driftwood cavern was Smaug's cave. But wait, Godzilla here was eating crickets, right? I looked around and could not find Smaug nor the other two sun skinks anywhere. There's no way. When Godzilla was done, he crawled out and basked on the driftwood ledge, one of Smaug's favorite basking spots. Seeing our croc taking it now, though cool, was very alarming to see. Still no sign of the sun skinks anywhere. That was it. I had to look for them. Later that day, I had a team come in to completely remove one panel of glass to convert it into a door so it could be easier for me to get into this key area of the vivarium by the moss wall, high in vegetation density where the sun skinks like to hide. The guys worked meticulously to carefully remove all framing, silicone caulking, and parts to make way for the new glass door that was to be installed. For the brief period that the glass panel had been removed, I had to make sure nothing was escaping, but it was so crazy to suddenly have full access to this area of the tank. I initially didn't design a door here because in my mind, I thought this area would be all moss and wouldn't be an area I would need to get into. But the day had come where I needed to. And when the glass door was finished, I went in to search for our missing sun skinks. I stood at the edge of the forest, in my yard, with the heaviest of heart. They say, if you truly love something, you gotta be willing to let it go. I looked into the plastic tank and recalled a promise I had made to an old friend. You will remain the apex beast of these lands for as long as you show me signs that you're thriving in this kingdom I've made for you. For I acknowledge that you are not my pet, but a partner, to help me learn about the incredible world from which you come. With the croc now freely frolicking and basking on Pandoran soils during the daylight hours, he would only grow more and more confident and strong as he competes with the sun skinks for the same food and basking areas. I knew it could soon lead to territorialism and possible aggression between the croc and the sun skinks. So, in light of this, I felt the time had come where I could no longer guarantee the fulfillment of my end of the partnership with Smaug and the sun skinks, that they would remain the unharmed apex predators of the forest. So, I made the decision to do what was right. Thanks to the new glass door, I was able to hunt the sun skinks down in the moss and catch them. Drake, thank you. You may return to the forest. Den, so may you. Thank you, girl. And as I held Smaug in my hands, for the last time, our very first sunskink and apex predator to have blessed Pandoran soils, I felt so much pain and gratitude in my heart. She had grown so much from when we first caught her 7 months ago. She had grown up wonderfully with us, enjoyed many days basking around the forest, grown out a new tail end, and was probably holding some babies in that round belly. She also had taught us a lot about what it means to be a lizard of the forest. And so, It was time to teach her about what it means to be a human of compassion. I turned her towards the forest. Do you remember this place, Smaug? It's time to return home, my golden dragon. I laid her down, and as soon as her body felt the old familiar soils of her birthplace, she took off. There was a quick moment when Smaug glanced back to see if I was following her. Bye, Smaug. Go ahead. I watched as our beloved sunskink disappeared into the foliage. My heart was so heavy saying goodbye, but also full of joy, knowing our sunskinks were back in the wild where they belonged. I hoped they would enjoy the rest of their lives consuming insects in the forest, and so marked the end of an era. The era of the sunskinks in Pandora. As I sat in front of the vivarium, knowing that Smaug and the sunskinks were no longer part of Pandora, sleeping somewhere below the moss like usual, our forest felt so empty. With all the new animals having been placed inside our rainforest, this day was supposed to be an exciting one. But right now, it was just so hard to look inside. It was hard to accept that our rainforest had changed, and the sunskinks were gone. But I looked up and noticed a small movement over by the pond. It was a crab, and it was picking at edibles on a branch. It was quite cute and made me smile a bit. It then crawled back to its friends, who were all enjoying their new pond. It was pretty cool that these little crabs were adapted to both pond life and tree life, two very different worlds. I began to wonder how these crabs evolved from just living completely in water to eventually wandering onto land and then up in the trees, realizing in each new environment that, hey, we can actually live up here too. What a journey it must have been for their species. It was then that I was reminded how crabs have been so successful at occupying so many different habitats in the world. They were true masters of change. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that a rainforest is always changing. How many ant colonies have we seen rise and fall since we first started 7 months ago? The marauder ants, acrobat ants, a trapjaw ant queen, and even the invasive black crazy ants and fire ants have all come and gone. As the season changed from scorching hot summers to a cooler rainy season, we've had to say goodbye to so many cherished animal friends. Millipedes, which exploded at one point some months ago, were now a less frequent sight. Whatever happened to the tarantula I put in that one time? Or that tiny mystery frog I spotted out of nowhere in one episode? I've begun to see jumping spiders again in our rainforest after not seeing them for months. The animal and plant profile of our rainforest is always changing, depending on the seasons, the moving in of new plants, soil, or wood, and the interactions between the organisms themselves. Change, paradoxically, seems to be a constant in our rainforest. So, indeed, though our grand tropical kingdom had changed, with the sunskinks gone, deep down, I knew it was a good thing, and our sunskinks were back where they belonged. Cycling through the predators was, after all, part of the plan for this ecosystem project. Since the start, I covered it in the 3rd episode of Season 1. It would mimic how predators naturally move in and out of a given space of wild rainforest. Also, in nature, predators are constantly displacing other less powerful predators, competing for the same resources, driving them out of a territory to hunt and live elsewhere. In this way, cycling through larger animals would ensure the ecosystem constantly changes. And change seems to be happening pretty quickly in our rainforest. Look at how fast the vines are taking over Orchadia. Vine leaves, elongated stems, and tendrils were stretching far out into the light, determined to be the first to completely monopolize the canopy, as if the vines had coordinated a mass launch attack to invade the rainforest. Even the vines down in Pandora have suddenly begun to send down pink air roots straight for the soils to help gather more nutrients to fuel this great vine explosion. The vines have begun to climb the glass bridge and have officially touched the top mesh of Orchadia. Other plants are doing their best to keep up. The banyans have also begun to send out air roots to help with gathering more nutrients to feed their growth of more foliage. As the overseer of our grand double rainforest world, I've been learning to embrace these sometimes turbulent winds of change, because nature is never stagnant, stationary, nor fixed in one spot. It's dynamic. It moves and is flexible. It finds its way through the chaos and inspects every unoccupied space. It cycles through and reinvents itself, evolving in a never-ending process towards an outcome that is always net positive for life. And it's the only way our biosphere has been able to endure the countless adversities that could have completely exterminated life on our planet in our past. Earth is designed to roll with all punches, and change is her secret sauce to victory. Change was definitely a sign that our cloud rainforest ecosystem vivarium was truly alive. Patience, Valentino. I have some decisions to make. Hey, what's that? Not the crab. That. Oh no! Vote in my community tab to affect this story.